Alright, for this phase of the project, we are going to be using a new set of tools that chances are you may have not used before if you've not used Photoshop for creating websites. And that is the Slice tool and the Slice Select tool. Now those can be found under the Crop tool. So if you click and hold the Crop tool over here, you'll see that there is a Slice tool and a Slice Select tool. So here's what you have to do. You think of the Slice tool as it's creating a separate element for the website. And each of those elements becomes like a grid. So think like a grid when you're using the Slice tool here. You want to be able to section off certain areas that have certain types of elements in them and also where those items are going to go. Now, that may not make perfect sense right here, but let's talk about two different things real quick. Placement is going to be the one thing we can see where everything's already at. Photoshop's done a nice job of showing placement, and we can get code that we can then give to the developer that can then help program that part of the web page. The other element that you need to look out for on the web is what type of file that you're creating here. What are you selecting that's different? So we have basically two things on the web. There's bitmaps, which is going to be something like this photo right here, and you have something else like text. So text is its own thing that can be added through code. That's all part of the HTML and all that stuff. But the graphic itself, that's its own element that needs to be saved a separate way. Now you have two different types of graphics. You have a bitmap, which is going to be like a photo, something that has just tons of pixels that make it up. And then you have something that's a vector graphic, or maybe an SVG or something like that, that is more solid. Maybe it's something that was created in Illustrator. Something that has like a lot of solid colors in it here. This logo is a perfect example. Maybe I didn't want this to be a font in HTML. Maybe I just wanted to make that a graphic. That could then be a maybe a GIF or a PNG file. Those are the kinds of things you need to plan for now and be able to slice and segment and separate those things. All right, so again, that'll make a little bit more sense as we start to go through the process here. Again, what we're going to do is go over to the Crop tool and we're going to select the Slice tool, not the Select, but the Slice tool. So what I'm going to do is start to turn my guides on, and I'm going to start to kind of just section off the areas here. So for the first one up here, I'm going to say this is just a big blank white area here. I can code that through just code to tell it to be white, however I want to do that. The next area will be the logo. And I can say I want to definitely define at least this much room. Think of it as creating a cell or a holding pattern for a certain object within an area. Now the more optimized you can be, the better, but also the more graphics you have, the worse it becomes. So now what I did is I created two boxes so far, and I can see that anything that's blue, I see a little blue up there with the number 1 and a little kind of icon next to it. That shows that it's an actual slice that I made, not something that Photoshop made. I also made this one over here, so now it turned blue, but there's the number 1 and then number 3. We'll get back to that. But now there's also, I haven't done anything over here, but Photoshop automatically created a gray one over here and a gray one down here and a gray one down here, saying that, okay, well, even if this guy stops right now, I'm going to at least create these other slices because I have to do this whole thing. So it's just kind of like auto assuming what you're going to do next here, but it's just more of a placeholder. So don't be confused with that. The blue are the ones that you have done. Now, one thing I like to do as I'm going through here is look at the numbers, because we can already see there's somewhat of an issue. There's that we go from 1 to 3. Now, if you have basic common sense, you know that there's something not right there. Where'd 2 go? So I'm going to zoom in even more, and I can see that I've got a little bit of overlap, or actually just they're not quite touching in here. So all I need to do is grab that little node on the slice and pull it over, and you can see that turned to 2. It looks like it tried to jump to the guide up here, which is actually what it should have done. But number 1 did not do that. So in that case, what I can do is I can just kind of mouse over to get the node. I'll pull that one back a little bit here. And what I can do is I can hit Command and click on this area over here. And what that does is it changes from the Slice tool to the Slice Select tool. So the Slice Select tool lets me actually select that slice and move it around. So now if I move it right to that guide, right there, I'm good. And I'm coming back to this one. I'll move that one to the same guide. And we go now from 1 to 2. So now I'm back in order. Now I'm doing good. But I do see that I've got a little bit of overlap here where let me zoom in a little bit more, where I can see that the logo is just touching into the other slice. I did want this first slice to be all white. I did not want that logo to kind of go into here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab that logo and I'm going to move it over a pixel, and we are now good to go. All right. So now another reason that I separated these is because, again, I can use HTML code to create this as being a white area. I can separate this as being probably a GIF, maybe a ping graphic over here because it's a nice solid color. It's more like a vector graphic. Now all this stuff over here is going to need to be programmed in because these may change on the fly. This may be something that's created from a database. This is all going to be actual text and not graphics. So what I can do is just create like one big cell up here for all of this stuff to appear for the coder to put into there. So I'm going to go back to my slice tool and I'm going to say from here, drag it all the way over. And now I've got number 3, so I'm doing good. 1, 2, 3, good. And I've got one big area up here that this will just be an open spot, a holding cell for the programmer to put all the stuff in. And I'm going to come down here. I'm going to say, okay, this is one big graphic. I don't need to divide this up into different pieces for any reason. I'm just going to click up there and pull it on down. Now, by default, this should start to snap to different points within your Photoshop document here. If it's not, it is something that you can adjust within your Photoshop settings, whether or not the slice tool snaps. You can have it snap to guides, you can have it snap to images or layers or different things like that. Again, by default, it should be already set up for you, so it's just kind of already jumping right into place, so I don't have to fine tune it too much. So you can see that did get right on the photo there. It's perfect. So this will be its own graphic. It'll be separated as I go to the next process here. Now, all of this, let's say all of this could just be regular type. Now, all this type I want to fit within this area here. Now, what I can do is with CSS, I can tell it to not go beyond a certain width, and I can have it center within the page here. So I really don't need to create any kind of gutters like I did up here. Again, that was just kind of to create a negative zone up here. As I go into this area here, I don't really need to do that because the coder will be able to do that. Knowing when and to do certain things and when not to do certain things is something that you'll learn as time goes on, so I don't expect you to know all of that to begin with. Just kind of experiment with different things and you'll understand as things go on, or maybe if you have a developer that you can talk to say, hey, how would you like this sliced up? Maybe a good way to approach this, but for the most part, anything that's going to be text, try to keep text and just have it be one big area. You can do almost anything with CSS nowadays, so don't be afraid just to create that as one big open layer. And this down here. Okay, so this is going to get a little bit tricky. What we want to do is we want this to be a graphic for the most part, but this is going to be actual text on here, and these will be 2 buttons that will have their own reaction state. So as you mouse over them, one thing will happen, same thing over here. So we want to be able to call them out a little bit differently. What I will do is I'm going to, again, another thing that we're experiencing is going to kind of come into play here is knowing when to use certain things. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of call out this as being one big slice. So it's be a graphic. Then I'll have another graphic maybe going across over here about the width of that computer. I'm going to extend it just a little bit past it like I did over on the left hand side. So right there I've got a little bit of a gap between the computer monitor and my slice. I'll do the same thing on this side, and I'll repeat this pattern over here. Now it looks like I've already kind of missed the mark down here, but I'll come back and adjust that. No, actually that's not right. So actually what I want to do is I want to create this as being one big just solid color area on the inside here. So maybe actually I do want to pull this stuff down and adjust it. So that's what's really cool about these slices, is that you can totally move them around almost just like you could with layers or shapes in any other program. So we had a couple things we need to fix here. Again, I want this area in the middle to be just code. So actually I'm going to pull this down so that it'll all be graphic on the top. But I'm also going to pull it in so I can pull in my other sides, if that makes sense. Alright, so again, using my command key, I'm going to get the slice select tool. I'm going to grab the corner node over there. I'm going to pull it in. There we go. Same thing over here. I'm going to adjust my slice. Cool, that looks a lot better. So now what I can do is have this whole area within here, because it has a nice solid background, which can just be an HTML color, that can have all the text inside of it, and these other areas surrounding it can be graphics. So again, I'm going to grab my slice tool. I'm going to create a slice down here. Now before I do that, just one thing to kind of, again, reiterate down here is that Photoshop created this kind of guesstimate slice down here as number 13. You can see because it's grayed out. But I say, you know what, that is correct, but I'm going to define it as a slice anyway. I'm going to come down here, and I can see because my numbers are off, and I can see there's kind of like a double line going on here. I can see my slices are still a little bit off. So again, I'm going to continue to adjust my slices until they're right on. Now it's snapping to something, so it's not like It's always going to be your fault. It could be a layer it's snapping to, just depends on how your thing's set up. And the line down here goes right across the green, but here I didn't extend it far enough, so I'm going to adjust it, kind of tweak it out. That little gray one went away. Come back a little bit. Cool. So I can see again, look at my numbers, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we're good. We're right on. All this area right here, this can all be HTML text, HTML green in the background. I can actually create this button through HTML. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create just one big slice right here. And all right, so you got to think about how you're going to do certain things before you go too far. With this one down here, this could all be one big area, and I can create these 3 columns in CSS or HTML. So really, I think I can do almost what I did up here by just creating a big solid area and putting the text in, and just make a note to the programmer of what they need to do, what I'm expecting them to do. Finally, this bottom area down here we can do is very similar to the logo at the top, where maybe we'll just create a little gap area right here. You can also do this through CSS. I'm just showing you some different ways to do it. And we'll create one big area right in there, which will house all the copyright copy and just anything else. And I'll create one just for the logo. And just to kind of mirror what I did on the left-hand side, I'll create just one gap box right there. And again, I want to look at my numbers on my slices, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Looks like I'm good to go. I want to zoom in on this logo. Make sure that's not encroaching on this other slice over here. I'm going to pull it to the left just a little bit. There we go. So I know it's definitely set up within there. And that is all I need to do for the slicing, at least part 1. In the next video, we're going to show you how to then really start to add some other elements to these sliced areas and really prepare it for the next step.